Hello everybody, welcome to WhatCulture Gaming. I'm Scott, joined by Ewan.
Hello.
Who came running to me with all sorts of Star Wars news, and he just said, come with me to the studio, I will fill you in with all sorts of fantastical bants. So you know things about the Star Wars game that we're getting from Respawn, which is coming later this year. Because as of yet, we don't know a goddamn thing.
And there's a little awkward press conference where they just had old Vince just chilling down here being like, hey, we're making this game.
Remains one of the weirdest ways to reveal your game ever, but it seems that we finally have some information as to how it's going to play.
Yeah, so obviously 2019 is another year of Star Wars Induced Madness. We have episode 9 coming out at the end of the year. No little Star Wars stories in between, but of course that means plenty of leaks. And if you've been keeping up with the leaking Star Wars Reddit, a lot of stuff has emerged over the past few weeks regarding episode 9, and there was a few concept art images that came out the other week. We won't mention them here because you don't want to spoil the film, but they actually corroborate a earlier leak that was posted a few months back on the Reddit, and he actually goes into great detail about Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order's story and what we can expect from it, because we know already that the game is set in between episodes 3 and 4. You'll play as a Padawan who kind of survives Order 66 and goes on the run. That's all we really know about the game. This leak actually comes up with some more information, and they say, quote, it takes place about 5 years after Revenge of the Sith and follows the main character whose name is Cal. He forgets his last name apparently.
Cal?
Yeah, Cal.
Okay.
He was a Padawan that survived the efforts to kill all the remaining Jedi. Not a ton of gameplay info, but some of the other storylines are that he has a mentor figure who is a woman named Ceres. The only other thing I remember is that them talking about characters that would come across from some of the comics. That's my forte.
Okay.
They mentioned the ninth sister and the second sister. Something about Inquisitors. Ooh.
Okay, so
I wish I could remember more about this. They showed a ton of artwork. So,
the whole thing with this is that initially when this stuff came out, we were like, this doesn't seem like it's necessarily all that credible or whatever, but the fact that the same artwork came that now seems to be more official for the movie retroactively gives this more credence.
Yeah, because in that same leak he mentions that they were talking about, they mentioned the stuff that eventually appeared in the concept art leak, so we know that it is, there is a modicum of truth to this. But one thing I want to talk about is the sisters and the Inquisitors, because if you have been keeping up with the expanded canon, you know you don't know. Darth Vader comic's really good, mate.
I've heard that. Darth Vader is good.
But the Inquisitors were actually a series of Jedi hunters that Darth Sidious turned from the Jedi Temple to become his own personal kind of hunters to kind of assist Vader to take down the Jedi. And the second and the ninth sisters were a few of the principal members. You see them pop up in Star Wars Rebels and the Marvel Star Wars comics as well. So this is kind of our first idea of who will be the villains in Fallen Order, and I guess it's kind of self-explanatory. We know that, if you're a Jedi in between episodes 3 and 4, Vader's probably going to come in. I'm
gonna go full on gameplay theory time, because if you looked at the games for gold that are on Xbox this month, I was potentially gonna leave with this as its own story thing. They've included the old Jedi Academy game, the original Xbox game, which if you guys haven't played, it's phenomenal. Good. Yeah, you can play it over the shoulder when you have your lightsaber, first person with your blasters, and it was just a great kind of arena-based Star Wars combat game.
The Quake engine?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and really played really well, great sense of locomotion and everything. And that's on this month's free Xbox games. Which why would that be being brought back if it wasn't a way to tell the fans, hey, by the way, this is the style of game that we're getting?
I mean, it already has half the title in there, Jedi.
Which ties in to the idea that we're going to be going after or fighting the sisters, and then you have the Inquisitors as well, which I don't know, you know way more about the Inquisitors, so give us a couple of lines.
So probably have an image, I don't know, they're in front of me or behind me, I don't know. They're basically these really pale figures that are recruited by Palpatine to be his own personal Jedi hunters. They have really cool spinny blade lightsabers. There's actually a few awkward scenes in Rebels where they're flying around with them, like they wield them in the air and they fly around like Mary Poppins or something, and it's kind of awkward, but they also are really, really cool. And it's an interesting kind of lead to go with, because I've always liked the idea. Jedi Outcast is actually my favorite Star Wars game.
It's phenomenal.
And one of the best things that you can do in both that and Academy is duel against multiple people at once. And of course, the Inquisitors enable kind of Respawn to lead with that angle of maybe being able to duel multiple Sith at once, which is really cool.
Yes, I mean that's the thing. If they're channeling those old school games, then there was this big. The thing is, I don't think that many people. I wonder how many people have played them. Is my thing, because I wonder how many people. Because you could be a teenager, you could be born after those games even released, and you wouldn't even know that some of the best Star Wars games are out there.
I was only 6 when the first one
You were
came
a wee nipper,
and I played it.
I know, and so when you think about the way that those games played, yes, they had a heavy melee focus, and you could take on multiple people by blocking at the right time, and there was just that way. It had that whole kind of melee sensibility, and I hope that that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Mainly because as a dev, we've only really seen Respawn do shooter stuff, and so we know they can satisfy on the blaster side, but maybe there's a whole.
Apparently, Respawn now have 2 studios apparently, so they're working in tandem, which is really interesting. So we could see more Titanfall this year, and then we're also getting Star Wars. I've recently got an article that should be going up either after this video or before it, talking about things that I want to see in Jedi Fallen Order. So go check that out if you want. I really want to be able to customize my own lightsaber from the ground up. You know, like do the little finicky, that's a useless button, I'll have that on there. Or something. You know that? No?
I mean, the whole Inquisitor thing kind of plays into that as well, because we've seen. I mean, I know next to nothing about Inquisitors, other than I think that was the style of hilt that the new Darth Maul had in Solo. Yes, holding up like a weird, like more jagged edged looking thing. And so if you're going to play into that sense, like that side of customizing your character and having a greater variety of hilts and stuff.
That's interesting. I didn't even consider this.
Is a way to.
You could potentially meet Crimson Dawn and Maul potentially. I don't know if they want to go down that route. That's a potential thing that they could do. I'm looking forward to seeing potentially some cameos as well, because if they're pooling into the expanded universe, you know, if anyone's read the Vader comment down in the comments below, because I really want to see Dr. Aphra, who's basically evil space Indiana Jones. There's actually a scene in the Vader comment where she goes around and it's like, this belongs in an armory.
Oh god,
it's great.
I mean, sure, you might as well. My thing is, they've only got to sit. I mean, I know that they trimmed a hell of a lot of the extra universe stuff back, so the things that are there they should play into, and that whole time period between episode 3 and 4 is the most potent time for Jedi's on the run, like, you know, scrappy sort of stuff, like in the Clone Wars. I think was it the second season or whatever it is in the Clone Wars, where we see Obi-Wan fight against Darth Maul again, and you have things like that where they can tap back into, you know, like sort of plot threads that are left behind and whatever. The only thing that I keep coming back to is how much they haven't shown us officially. So we've got Vince Zambella sitting in a chair telling us about it 2 years ago.
Chair, maybe, I don't know.
Nice chair, I don't know. And then that was all we got. And so like at the minute you've kind of got to pick at threads, but combining things like this kind of hints at potential villains that we have mixed with the style of gameplay that we're going to get. I think it's a sequel to the old school Xbox Jedi Academy / whatever you call them, Outcast games.
Amazing.
With the sisters and the Inquisitors and all that jazz all at once. So let's just talk in general about the fact that Star Wars is in a bit of a place right now in terms of, I mean, the movie, whatever's going to happen for the rest of the year, and, you know, Star Wars video games are assumingly going to start rolling back out again. How do you think Jedi Fallen Order can even make an impact with what we know so far?
Yeah, I think the most frustrating thing to me is that episode 3 to 4 is a period we've seen quite a lot in the expanded canon, even back during the old canon, which is now Legends. We had loads of stories centered around that time. I mean, The Force Unleashed took the same setting. It was in between 3 and 4. But, you know, there's plenty of cause to be excited, because I think the story sounds really interesting. The idea of actually playing a fugitive Jedi. We've not had that before. We've only either been like a Sith assassin or a smuggler or whatever. So I'm really interested in seeing that, because we haven't ever really focused on the Jedi apart from Skywalker and Kenobi during the original trilogy. So that in itself is really interesting. I'm also kind of curious to see how they work in certain customizable elements. So I already mentioned like the lightsaber, which I think would be really cool.
Yes.
But I want to know what kind of lightsabers you could use. Like, could you use more than one? Could you use a crossguard saber or a double blade or the spinny helicopter one that they use? Maybe.
Well. Because in KOTOR 2 you could get the Darth Maul saber.
Yeah.
And in the old Jedi Academy games you could dual wield.
And you could kick.
You could do a nice little lovely kick.
Yeah.
There's just I feel like there's so much more that needs to be mined in terms of like really drilling down something like a For Honor type game where you've got these really specific timing windows and attack patterns, animation style stuff.
In the old Jedi Knight games, they had stances. So you had a heavy attack where your guy would like bring your sword up to here, a light attack where you have it middle, and then a little light one where you just go like this with the sword, which is pretty bad. But
I would take all that stuff. I still think it's weird how much they haven't shown off, but it just means that we can kind of pick and choose with things like this. Because assumedly, again, I don't know anything about the Inquisitor sisters, but they're assumedly very good when it comes to fighting. Like they're going to take something to overcome.
They are actually corrupted from the Jedi Order. So Palpatine takes them from the Jedi Order. The Grand Inquisitor was actually a temple guard on Coruscant, which is again is really, really interesting. I would be curious to see, because apparently it's set 5 years after or whatever, but I think the original story will pick up moments after Order 66. So it'd be interesting if they managed to weave in a little bit of backstory, a little bit of back and forth between these characters.
Yeah, because I mean, you think of the way the movie portrays Order 66. Like obviously Palpatine gives the order, and then we just cut to a bunch of people getting exterminated. But that's such a widespread thing.
Yeah,
there's so much it, you could just zoom in and tell the story of anyone in the middle of that, going up against.
Well, exactly,
Stormtroopers.
and I mean, Obi-Wan sends the distress sequel at the Jedi Temple, which warns all the other Jedi to go away. And then in Star Wars Rebels, we focus on a Jedi called Kanan Jarrus, who basically, he kind of does what Kyle Katarn does. He severs his connection from the Force, and it's just like a rebel. But then you get to see that kind of element of being a Jedi during the rebellion. There's only one way a story of a Jedi before Luke Skywalker can end, sadly.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting that, we have this element to really pick apart, because there are certainly other time periods that I'd be more interested in seeing, but they could definitely do a lot of good with it.
The thing that I love the idea of is that, because you assume that anyone who was alive in that time period is going to be wiped out eventually, but one of the biggest things that I loved back when Rogue One was still being theorized was that Jyn Erso would do something before the events of Episode 4 that carries through into the main timeline, and we've seen that a little bit in Battlefront 2 in terms of aging characters, and you sort of go back to them in the different timeline. I would love if they did something with Cal or whatever the cast is in Jedi Fallen Order that lets them then go, okay, this leads into, or these events take place parallel to Luke, and you didn't even realize that this Jedi was hiding out the whole time or whatever. I quite like little things like that. It's sort of like add little addendums. I
completely agree. It maybe sounds a little bit superficial to be like, oh, I love the canon, but I love feeling like my story has consequences. I love the idea that I'm influencing something. So if they find a way to potentially reappraise the story that we saw in Rebels or in another game or in another comic, that would be really cool. So I'm very excited about this. Maybe have a few vehicle sections in there as well. I know EA Motive were heavily involved with Project Orca, the second one that EA cancelled. So maybe they'll get to do some vehicle sections in this, maybe a little bit of the old Starfighter action, maybe
possibly
some speed biker stuff. I don't know.
One of the most overlooked one of the best things in Battlefront 2 is the vehicle-based stuff, which is one of the modes that we spend the most time in. So it's I know they're different devs, but if you're going to sort of make these little comparisons to, hey, look at Star Wars gameplay in general, there's something to pick from there as well. Anyway, let us know what you think down in the comments below of your thoughts on the new Star Wars game that we don't even know that much about. I've been Scott from WhatCulture.com, joined by Ewan.
You can follow me on Twitter, or you will follow me on Twitter, at Ewan Ruins Things.
And I'm at /LP89, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye. I'm a Toydarian. You might just don't work on me, only mine.
That's EA. Only mine.